Welcome back to the channel. This is Anka Engineering and I'm Herman Weigman. And today's video is going to be another installment on the clutch storyboard for the Jaguar F-Type manual. We're going to learn a bit about 6-puck clutch interface to the flywheel. We're also going to learn about the new sport touring clutch that I've identified, and we'll get some driving impressions on that. And finally, this video primarily will be a bit of a speed run through the process of extracting the clutch and reinstalling it. A lot of you have asked how long does it take, and it's about 6 hours. Either way, as Gary Mavers would say, let's get stuck in. I'm going to nerd out on clutches here for a little bit, and I'm going to start with the disc that I've operated in my car in two different orientations. If we look at this very closely, we'll see that this ACT clutch, which was built for Ford, Mazda, Mitsubishi, Evo, etc., does have a transmission side preference. And this is the spring pack towards transmission side, and the relatively low profile side of the disc is then preferred towards the flywheel. And that's usually because Ford, Mazda, Mitsubishi, they have a lot of flat flywheels. Very little room back here for spring pack. And so they account for it by having a pressure plate which can deal with this large spring pack. The other thing you'll notice is that I did put on here the Marcel spring, or flag shape. I've outlined it with my Sharpie marker. And engines of this type, when looking at the engine or looking at the flywheel, transmission side out, flywheel in, they usually turn in a counterclockwise fashion. And so in that sense, the clutch, which is normally attached to the transmission, the engine is coming by and the pressure plate is coming by in a counterclockwise fashion. And these Marcel springs, or the metal that secures the friction material to the center hub, has a flag-like shape. And the flag-like shape points in the rotation of engine direction. So usually the engine is slipping by in a counterclockwise manner. When it locks up, then they both rotate. Okay? Now, I had an issue because the pressure plate with tines kissed down on the spring pack. So I took my car apart, looked at the clutch and said, well, I'm just going to flip it over such that the shallow side is towards the pressure plate. And that worked out great. But now you'll see that the flag is pointing in the other direction. So the friction, the engine and pressure plate are sliding by when you're slipping the clutch or engaging it in that direction. And then I started to notice, after about several thousand miles, I started to notice a wave. When you slowly engage the clutch, you did feel a wave. And I think it's because of these Marcel springs pointing in the wrong direction. Well, that problem's solved now because I found a new disc with the appropriate orientation. Also probably made by ACT, same sort of parts, but commissioned by a different company that specializes in VW, Audi, and Porsche. And so this is for their Porsche 996 upgrade application. And looking at the flags, they point in the correct direction, and this is flywheel side. So the flags now are pointing in the right direction. The Marcel springs are good. All the other dimensions are great. The correct hub, the correct thickness, the right dimensions. Grand. So this is going in my car today, and we'll drive on that to meet the requirements of that sport touring application. Just to add more to the story, I also have a Sachs high performance clutch from a Porsche 996, and looking at it, it also says the spring pack should go towards the flywheel, which has the deep dish, and so that's all great. But when I looked at the Marcel springs in this particular application, I noticed that they're symmetric. They don't have a flag in one direction or the other. It's like a center mount flag post with flags in both directions. So one could argue then that this could process torque in either direction under acceleration or engine braking. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Common clutches have a preferred direction, while this Sachs one seems to be somewhat bidirectional.
Okay, here we are under the car. This is an intermediate muffler that joins the two pipes. And these are the two pipes looking forward to the transmission with the catalytic converters. Some people try to disconnect the pipes here in this region. These are joints. I loosen them, which then allows these pipes to rotate a bit, and it makes it nice to fit the exhaust back in the car. But I've never taken these apart. Why? I don't think it's useful, because to take the transmission out, you really need to take the drive shaft out, which is above this heat shield. So you have to get above here anyway. So the whole muffler, the whole exhaust pipe from catalytic converters all the way back to the rear exhaust do have to come down. Again, so you can get back behind the heat shield and take down the drive shaft. So I leave these loose and in place. And that allows me to move things a little bit and extract it from the car. All right, let's start going backwards.
I thought I would take a look at the drive shaft end. This is the end of the drive shaft to the pinion yoke on the rear differential. The other end is the transmission. This one is often difficult to get out of the pinion yoke on the differential. You will see some rusting here, and that rusting can get into that joint. The pinion, though, yoke sits right around here. Now, mine has been in and out of the car 4 or 5 times now, 6 times, whatever. So it's relatively easy for me to get this one out. But a lot of people struggle with this. And so what I tried doing is there are 2 extra holes on the pinion yoke, and I tried getting in there with an Allen key and tapping this out through the 2 extra holes in the back of the yoke. And that was ineffectual. So what I've done in the past is I've tried to shoot for the second groove here and tap it out by catching the lip of this groove. Now what can happen is you can knock the cover off, and that's not so bad, but this cover is soft metal. Here you can see me, I probably pounded on it a bit, and if you do poke it off, you then do get access to the grease, but oops, shit. Oh, crap me. Didn't want to do that. There we go. Let me, because that takes the CV joint apart that's in here. There's these constant velocity balls that couple the yoke to the shaft. You don't want to get in there, because then you can introduce debris. I just wanted to point out that, crap, I did it again. There is this gasket back here, this green gasket, and that does have to fit between the bolt holes. So let me see if I can get this guy back on. Okay, figured out the mystery here. One has to pull the lid back, get all the ball bearings evenly loaded and spaced, and then one can put the lid back on, which retains the ball bearings from escaping again. So this lid, it's very important that it stays coupled to this yoke, to this carrier. I think the better choice was something I've done before, is I've taken a Dremel tool and cut a notch in here so that there's a definitive notch up against something you can chisel away at without risking taking off the cover. Actually, one final comment. Joey, one of the manual transmission folks who did install Quaife ATB rear differential, also had to remove his drive shaft, and he did munge up this component, and he had to find a replacement drive shaft, which was difficult because it's unique to the manual car, the length of the drive shaft. Okay, so if you have a manual car, try to preserve your drive shaft. I thought I'd take this opportunity to flip the drive shaft around and look at the coupler that goes into the transmission yoke. This one doesn't have two rings on the outside. It's smooth, so there's really nothing, if you wanted to pound it out, there's nothing to grab onto. So I highly suggest that if you do decide to use the chisel tool, that you do get a Dremel tool and cut a special groove in the middle, rotate it around, and maybe one on the back side, so that there's two places for you to pound out. Now this is the same sort of cover, holds and retains the grease and the ball bearings, and this is the back cap. Now mine is greased up. I can feel the grease on there because I didn't want this to rust into the transmission yoke, so I've lubricated mine with some grease. Okay, here we are looking at the pressure plate. This one had only about 1,000 or 1,200 miles on it. Very mild dust, not much at all. This does have the 6-puck ceramic disc, and we want to change that out. Not the track or autocross style friction disc, but we want to move down to the Sport Touring, which is an organic friction disc. So that's why we're back in here.
get a close look here. Wear pattern's a little off. I'll take a look at the 6-puck clutch and see why that occurred. I can take this off, remove it, and we can resurface this a little bit. Okay, let's take a peek at the flywheel and the clutch. What came out of my Jaguar was the 6-puck sintered ceramic disc. And we did notice this ring of shininess on the flywheel heat shield or friction surface. It's an aluminum flywheel with a steel insert. That's how it comes from Aasco Motorsports. Okay, so we have here clutch pack towards the flywheel, and we see the rivets are a little too tall. And if I'm looking at this, I think, yeah, how about that? This one is worn a heck of a lot more than that one. If you look at the total thickness, it should be around 8 millimeters. No, we're down around 7.25. This disc wore fairly heavily, 7 millimeter, 7.1-ish, 7.1 millimeter. So I wonder why. Maybe these discs wore prematurely. And looky here. Yes, the rivets wore in this region, but the shininess is here. Fascinating. But it's interesting to see that this disc is worn twice as much as this one. This one still has a lot of meat on it. That one actually looks normal. So that mated with this surface, and that was reasonably normal. No bluing, no funny business going on that side. That was a good mate. But this one, for some reason, had a little bit of problem. There might have been a problem with the ceramic friction material because it burned through faster and then kissed down on the rivets. So I'm glad I caught this quickly. This has only been in the car for roughly 1,000 something miles. And I'm glad that I'm moving then away from the 6-puck because it didn't really mate well. Just thought I'd make a few comments about the alignment procedure. I've had good luck and bad luck. What we have here is the flywheel, and once it's bolted onto the engine, we can then mount the pressure plate and the clutch disc. Now, what I've noticed is if you align it in the car, the weight of the disc will push it down just a little bit, and you'll notice that it's not the best alignment. So as the pressure plate comes on and starts to get bolted to the flywheel, I usually just wiggle this up, down, left, right. I try to get right in the middle. And then I can bolt the pressure plate on a little further. It is under tension.
And that concludes today's video on the exchange of a 6-puck to an organic clutch to help serve that sport touring application. I do want to give you some driving impressions. We've put maybe 50 to 100 miles on that clutch, and it's nice. It's soft, it's smooth, it's not jarring. It doesn't have that really rapid uptake that the 6-puck ceramic had. So in that sense, it's a win. And I can really say with confidence now that the lightweight aluminum flywheel with this particular clutch combination pair is probably going to be a winning combination for that sport touring class. I am going to take the 6-puck clutch off of the autocross or track recommendation for right now because we had that massively accelerated wear on one face, basically between the clutch and the aluminum flywheel interface, which is that metal disc, which is called a heat shield or a friction disc. So that's off the table for right now. But I did want to give a shout out to nephew, Jonathan Pickles. He came by, worked hard, helped me out. And so it was great to see him. And he also got to drive the car with the new clutch. And remember, my friends, drive well.